I read a story which was published last night, but I caught it this morning since I go to bed early. Caught it this morning, and it was about the late comedian Don Rickles, who died last Thursday. And it said if Rickles happened to be starting his career today, it would never take off because his type of humor was so politically incorrect. But the writer went on to say that Rickles had a way of saying things to people that you found funny, that if I said it or you said it, they might take offense. 923, it's 45. Our next guest had a chance to meet the comedian on a couple of different occasions, and we'll be getting to our guest, Lieutenant Colonel Steve Heil, in just a moment. But quick note, Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. First of all, Colonel, welcome back to the program. Colonel, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
I think that Sophie was bothering you.
Yes, Sophie the ferocious.
Yes. Steve has a cat that looks a lot like a big black lion from out in the wild, so he's got to keep her in line while he's actually sometimes in the office. Uh, right off the top, you were telling me the other day we were going to have you here Friday, and then we got pushed back because of the breaking news on Syria. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but you had an opportunity to meet Don Rickles when you were serving with the Air Force Thunderbirds, and wonder if you could tell people a little bit about that encounter. He was known to be somewhat of a caustic guy. What was your experience?
Well, actually, quite the opposite. He was. He had. There were two Don Rickles. There was the one that we all associate with him, being the rude, obnoxious individual. But that was about 180 degrees removed from who he was as Don Rickles, an individual. As you know, all the stars in Vegas, of course, they don't go on until in the evening. And if they've been in Vegas as many times as some of them have, they get bored. So every now and then they would come out and one or the, would come out and visit the Thunderbirds. You just never knew who might show up. This particular case, Don came and his family came to visit us and really hung out for about 3 or 4 hours, as I remember. And fascinating stories. He had just come back from 6 weeks in Israel at that time, and had spent a considerable amount of that time with the Israeli military and Air Force, and quite knowledgeable and really concerned about what was happening in the world at that time. And it was, but he was a delightful person. He really was. He was almost humble, if you can believe that. And he brought his two kids with him and his wife, and they were delightful too, and very well mannered, the kids. And it's just a different person than most of us think of Don Rickles.
Did he insult you at any point, though, just for fun?
Oh yeah, he did. At one point in time, the base, the wing commander was taking him out to tour the flight line, but he couldn't take the the limo out, the Sahara limo. Had to go in an official vehicle. So he was going with the wing commander, and he wanted his limo driver to be able to go along too. So we were just as before we went out. He said, hey, give me the keys." And he gave the limo driver gave him the keys, and to the limo he flipped the keys to me and says, and then he gave me a quarter and said, "Here, kid, drive because I have to meet you down at the other end of the runway." So I was going to drive the limo down there, and but he said, "While you're at it, here's a quarter. Go get an ice cream cone, kid."
Now, years go by, and you're then working in Washington, and you're helping plan the second Reagan-Bush inauguration. And the big night comes along, and who do you run into at the gala but the Rickles family again, right?
Yeah, well, that was Frank Sinatra orchestrated this it was actually a big entertainment. There must have been 50 or 60 celebrities that actually, for about 2.5, 3 hours, entertained the Reagans and Vice President Bush. And then after the show, they all went backstage, and we had an after-show party. And I was actually standing with Frank Sinatra at the time that Rickles and his wife walked in, and, he and Sinatra were really great friends. But he says, "Oh no, there goes the party. Rickles just walked in," and so I immediately went over to say hi and was going to reintroduce myself, not thinking they'd remember after 8 years having met before. But first thing Barbara said is, "Oh, we know you. You're that young officer that we spent some time with you and your Thunderbird teammates at a long time ago." And I said, "Wow," they remembered. But they were just very nice people.
We've got a short break. Can you stick around through the next segment? Because on a more serious topic, I wanted you to talk a little bit about your reaction to what happened in Syria last week.
Sure.
We've got a short break, 9:30 right now. Our guest is Lieutenant Colonel Steve Heil. He's retired from the United States Air Force and joins us periodically on the show with some tales from the past and some of the people that he's had encounters with, but he also still has what you call a strong military mind. We'll be detailing that in a few minutes. We're at 44. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Our guest speaking with us during this segment of the program spent 20 years in the United States Air Force. Actually, he joined the Air Force. We had a conversation about this last week. He joined the Air Force. He was commissioned as an officer, made a gentleman. Some people up until that point weren't sure, but he was made a gentleman by an act of Congress on St. Patrick's Day, of all days. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Heil is joining us. He's now retired from the service. First of all, I wanted to point out we were talking about St. Patrick's Day and how it used to be a special day just because of that, but now you pretty much stay home on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, I'm afraid of leprechauns now.
They are
I
dangerous.
see them way too often.
well, on a much more serious note, after what we saw happen in Syria last week, and you know that I'm a bit of a skeptic, but from your perspective, coming from a military background, you actually appreciated what the president did.
Well, regardless of the motivation and everything, it was truly something that had to be done after all that transpired with our former commander in chief and his drawing lines in the sand and pontificating about how terrible the use of the gases was and wouldn't be tolerated, but never did anything. If Trump had not done anything, that would have weakened his position. And regardless, I think it sent a strong message not only to the Syrians, but that crazy guy over in North Korea and some others that there's a new sheriff in town. And
Steve, you still with us?
Only be more positive than negative in when history reviews it.
Can I? The latest is that the Russians and the Iranians are both saying if we cross this line again, that there's going to be some serious trouble. Is that just bluster, or are they doing what they have to do in this situation to save face?
Well, of course, there's a lot of going on behind the scenes, back and forth, and with the Russians and Putin and the president himself. But yeah, they have to do that to obviously save face. But I think the consequences, if Putin were to extremely elevate his reaction to this, it would be just as bad for Russia as it would be for us, and more importantly, um, this could be the Khrushchev moment when Kennedy stared down Khrushchev in the end, and I think that's what will be the final outcome in this
When it was the strange thing though was getting praise for Trump's actions from both ISIS and Al Qaeda last week.
case. Yeah, isn't that amazing?
I guess they're not looking to be allies, but as long as we're the enemy of another enemy of theirs, they
Uh,
appreciated it.
yeah, well, it's a strange geopolitical world that we live in, and it's I don't know how you untangle all the idiosyncrasies of how we go about uh, walking up to the brink of war and then walking back. And but I think again, in the end, this can only be a positive move for not only us, but America, but also the world in general. If we can tamp down some of these crazies that have been able to get along well way too long with poking us in the eye and getting away with it. And Trump said that's the end,
Got
and it's about damn time.
we've got about a minute to go. I read yesterday where the Chinese weren't really worked up about it as well, which was another concern. They seemed to be pretty much shrugged their shoulders and said, "Okay." Surprised by that?
Uh, no, not really. They don't really have a big dog in this overall fight, if you will. And I think coming at the time that it did, with when the Chinese president was here visiting with Trump, and from by all accounts that went very well. Now they're even talking about the Chinese making some concessions in regard to trade and the like, in order to better solidify our mutual respect for one another, if you want to say that. And so I don't think they were going to say that and then come out and condemn Trump for what he did.
Well, Colonel, always good talking with you, and we look forward to doing it again sometime soon. We've been a stranger for the last couple of months, but got to get you back here more often.
Yeah, well, great. Anytime. As you know, I certainly enjoy conversing and and the opportunity, at least, to say something about how I feel about what's going on in the crazy world.
You, a shrinking violet? Oh, come on. All right, talk to you soon, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Bill.
Bye bye now. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Heil joining us this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. 20 minutes left.